They told me I was too hard to love. That's what my own parents, the two people who were supposed to cherish me unconditionally, looked me in the eye and said. They then proceeded to cut me out of their lives completely, financially and emotionally, leaving me utterly adrift at the most vulnerable point in my young adulthood. Years later, after clawing my way back from the brink of despair, I had the opportunity to take away everything they had worked for, their entire livelihood, their carefully constructed public image, their very careers. And I took it. Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same? My story starts not with a bang, but with a whimper, a slow erosion of self-worth that began practically in my childhood. My parents, for as long as I can remember, were obsessed with appearances. They were pillars of our community, respected professionals. My mother, a renowned interior designer. My father, a sought-after architect. Their lives were meticulously curated, from their immaculately kept home to their perfectly behaved children. The problem, it seemed, was that I never quite fit into their perfect picture. My older sister, Clara, was the golden child. She was everything they wanted, graceful, intelligent, effortlessly charming, and beautiful in a way that just radiated warmth. I, on the other hand, was always more. More opinionated, more sensitive, more prone to emotional outbursts, and frankly, more awkward. From a young age, I felt like a perpetual disappointment. If Clara got an A, I got a B, and the difference was always highlighted. If she won an award, my participation trophy felt like a stark reminder of my mediocrity. It wasn't overt abuse, not in the way people usually think of it. There were no beatings, no starvation. It was a subtler, more insidious kind of neglect, a constant undertone of disapproval and exasperation that permeated every interaction. My interests were dismissed as silly, my struggles as overreactions, my very personality as something that needed to be managed, controlled, or ideally, changed. "Why can't you be more like Clara?" became a recurring refrain, a dagger to my already fragile self-esteem. By the time I hit high school, I was a bundle of anxieties and insecurities. I tried desperately to gain their approval, throwing myself into academics, volunteering, anything I thought might finally make them see me as worthy. But it was never enough. My successes were met with a lukewarm nod, while my failures, no matter how small, were met with pointed lectures and thinly veiled disappointment. The emotional distance between us grew into a chasm. I remember one particularly painful incident when I was 16. I had just poured my heart out in a creative writing piece, something deeply personal, and I was so proud of it. I showed it to my mother, hoping for some praise, some sign that she saw the real me in those words. She read it, nodded slowly, and then said, "It's a bit dark, isn't it? People might think you're disturbed. Maybe try writing something lighter next time." My heart shattered into a million pieces. The real turning point, the moment everything irrevocably shifted, came when I was 18 and preparing for college. I had been accepted into a prestigious art program, a dream come true for me, but a nightmare for my parents. They had always envisioned me following in their footsteps, a practical, respectable career. They wanted me to pursue architecture, like my father, or business, like Clara was doing. When I told them about my acceptance, their reaction was one of outright disgust. My father's face went rigid. "Art? What kind of future is that? That's not a career, that's a hobby for dilettantes." My mother chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. "We've invested so much in your education, only for you to throw it away on something so impractical. It's just another example of you being difficult." I tried to explain my passion, my vision, but it was like talking to a brick wall. They saw my choice as a direct affront, a deliberate act of defiance. The arguments escalated, becoming more frequent and more vicious. It culminated in a terrible fight one evening. I remember standing in their pristine living room, tears streaming down my face, desperately pleading for them to understand. My father, his voice cold and devoid of any warmth, finally uttered the words that would haunt me for years. "We just can't deal with this anymore. You're too emotional, too dramatic, too much of a challenge. Frankly, you're just too hard to love." My mother, instead of intervening, simply nodded in agreement, her gaze distant and unfeeling. "It's true," she said softly. "We've tried, but you make things so difficult." And with that, they effectively disowned me. They told me I was on my own for tuition, for housing, for everything. If I chose to pursue such a ridiculous path, I would do so without their support, financial or otherwise. They made it clear that until I came to my senses and pursued a proper career, I was not welcome in their home or their lives. I was stunned, heartbroken, and completely alone. I had no savings, no job, and suddenly, no family to fall back on. My older sister, Clara, called me a few days later, not to offer comfort, but to tell me I was being unreasonable and needed to apologize to our parents. It solidified my understanding. I was truly on my own. I ended up deferring my acceptance to the art program, completely crushed. I moved into a tiny, rundown apartment, got a minimum wage job, and tried to piece my life back together. Those first few years were incredibly difficult. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, feeling utterly worthless, questioning if what they said was true. Was I truly unlovable? I worked multiple jobs, scrimped and saved every penny, and slowly, painstakingly, started putting myself through community college, taking classes that I hoped would eventually lead me back to my artistic dreams. It was a long, lonely road, filled with moments of intense doubt and despair. But somewhere along the way, a fierce, quiet resolve began to grow within me. I realized that if I was too hard for them to love, then I would learn to love myself. I would build a life for myself, on my own terms, and I would prove them wrong. Years passed. I graduated from community college, then managed to get a scholarship to a lesser-known but still reputable art school, funding the rest of my education through grants, loans, and continued part-time work. I poured all my pain and passion into my art, finding solace and strength in creation. My work, often intense and emotionally charged, started gaining recognition. I exhibited in small galleries, then larger ones. I made connections, built a network, and slowly but surely started to make a name for myself. My focus was primarily on digital art and illustration, something my parents would have likely scoffed at as not real art, but I loved it. I found a sense of purpose and belonging I had never experienced before. I built a new family of friends and colleagues who celebrated my successes and supported me through my challenges. My old life, my old family, became a distant, painful memory I rarely dwelled on. I had found happiness, success, and most importantly, self-acceptance. So that's the situation I was in. I had built a successful career and a fulfilling life entirely on my own, without a single shred of support from the people who had abandoned me. My parents, meanwhile, continued their successful architecture and design firm. They had achieved a level of prominence in our city, known for their high-profile projects and their impeccable, if somewhat cold, aesthetic. They were often featured in local magazines, portrayed as a power couple, a testament to their refined taste and business acumen. My sister Clara had also done well, marrying into a wealthy family and living a life of comfortable luxury. I hadn't spoken to any of them in years, nor did I have any desire to. Then, one day, an opportunity landed in my lap, an opportunity that brought my two worlds, past and present, crashing together in a way I never anticipated. I was contacted by a major national publication, one of the most prestigious architecture and design magazines in the country. They were planning a huge feature on up-and-coming designers and wanted to include me, showcasing my unique digital art and design aesthetic. I was thrilled. It was a massive career break. During our discussions, the editor mentioned that they were also doing a retrospective on established firms and had been considering featuring my parents' firm in the same issue, as they were prominent figures in the local scene where I had originally grown up. My stomach dropped. I tried to maintain my composure. "Oh, really?" I asked casually, trying to mask the sudden surge of emotions. The editor, oblivious, continued, "Yes, your last name caught our eye, actually. Any relation, it's a fairly unique surname." I paused, my mind racing. This was it. This was the moment. I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let bygones be bygones? Or would you have seized the chance to finally, irrevocably, settle the score? I took a deep breath. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, "they're my parents." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. The editor sounded surprised, then intrigued. "Oh, how fascinating. We had no idea. What a wonderful story, a family of designers. We could even do a small piece on the family legacy." My blood ran cold at the thought of being associated with them, of them taking credit for my success, or worse, of having to pretend everything was fine. But a different thought began to form, a much darker, more compelling idea. "Well," I said, "it's not quite that simple. We haven't spoken in years. They cut me off when I chose to pursue art." I proceeded to tell the editor a carefully curated but entirely truthful account of my abandonment. I didn't exaggerate or lie. I simply stated the facts. How they disowned me for choosing art, how they told me I was too hard to love, how I had to build my career from the ground up with no support. I explained how painful it had been and how I had overcome it. I presented it not as a sob story, but as a testament to my resilience and determination, a narrative that framed my success as a triumph over adversity directly caused by them. The editor listened intently, interjecting with gasps of surprise and sympathy. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. "Wow," she finally said, her voice soft. "That's a powerful story, a very powerful story." Then she dropped the bombshell. "You know," she said, "our readers love stories of perseverance. And the irony of you, their unlovable artistic child, achieving this level of success independently, it's incredibly compelling. Perhaps instead of a family legacy piece, we could do a feature on your journey, explicitly mentioning their rejection and your triumph. It would highlight the incredible strength it took for you to get here. And as for asterisk, their asterisk retrospective. Given this information, perhaps it's not the best fit for our established excellence section this particular issue." My heart pounded. I knew exactly what she was implying. She was offering to scrap their feature, effectively sidelining them from a major national spotlight, and instead use asterisk my asterisk story, with them as the antagonists, as a central part of asterisk my asterisk triumph. It was a clear choice. I could be gracious, forgive, and forget. Or I could take the vengeance that was being handed to me on a silver platter. I didn't hesitate. "I think that would be a fantastic story," I said, my voice unwavering. "It's the truth, and I believe it could inspire others who have faced similar challenges." And that's exactly what happened. My feature article was a huge success. It was titled "Unlovable No More: How One Artist Forged Her Own Path After Parental Rejection." It was incredibly detailed, chronicling my struggles, my parents' dismissive words, and my ultimate rise. It didn't just mention they cut me off. It quoted my father's exact words. "You're just too hard to love." It described their firm and its reputation, juxtaposing their supposed professional perfection with their personal cruelty towards their own child. The article didn't just feature my art, it featured my pain and my victory over it, with them as the catalyst. Their firm's feature, of course, was quietly dropped. They were not just excluded. Their callousness was explicitly exposed to a national audience of their peers and potential clients. The fallout was immediate and devastating for them. The article went viral within the design and architecture community. People were shocked, appalled. Their meticulously crafted image of the respectable, elegant power couple shattered. Clients started pulling out of contracts. Speaking engagements were canceled. Their phone, I heard through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, who now, interestingly, reached out to me, full of belated sympathy, rang off the hook with angry and disappointed calls. Their reputation was in tatters. They became pariahs in a community that valued family values and integrity as much as professional skill. Within 6 months, their firm, once thriving, was a shell of its former self. They had to lay off most of their staff and take on smaller, less prestigious projects just to stay afloat. Their careers, their public persona, their very livelihoods, I had deleted them. I never heard directly from my parents. Not an apology, not a confrontation. Nothing. Clara sent me a furious email accusing me of being vindictive and ruining their lives. I simply replied, "You abandoned me. You stood by and watched them tell me I was unlovable. This is simply the consequence of your choices, not my malice." I didn't feel malicious, not really. I felt a profound sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction that the world finally saw them for who they truly were, beyond their polished facade. They had taken everything from me once, and now I had taken everything from them. Looking back, there are moments when I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember the coldness in their eyes, the sting of their words, the crushing loneliness of being cast aside by the people who were supposed to love me most. I remember the years of struggle, the nights I went hungry, the constant battle against self-doubt fueled by their rejection. And in those moments, any flicker of regret is extinguished. I built my life from nothing, forged my own path, and found my own worth, independent of their approval. They made their bed, and I simply ensured they had to lie in it publicly. So, was I wrong? I don't think so. I fought for my own existence, for my own right to be loved, starting with myself. I didn't seek revenge actively, but when it presented itself, I took it as a necessary act of self-preservation and justice. My story is a testament to resilience, to finding your own voice, and to the bitter truth that sometimes the people who are supposed to lift you up are the ones who try to tear you down. But you don't have to let them. If you've ever been told you're not good enough, or that you're too hard to love, know that it's a reflection of them, not you. Like this video if you were on my side, if you believe in standing up for yourself. Subscribe for more stories like this, where truth and resilience triumph over adversity. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.